welcome to the Hub Culture Pavilion. I'm outside the Ice House. It is Davos 2022. First interview. So excited to be with you. Adrian Corless, CEO of Carbon Capture Inc. Welcome.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me here. And again, Davos in summer, this is awesome.
Pretty nice,
it's
right?
Beautiful, yes.
So this is a big week, not just because we're in Davos, but actually in your field. The Department of Energy in the United States has announced a big investment into carbon removal technology. So tell me what that means for you.
Okay, so first of all, Carbon Capture Inc. is a company that manufactures and actually installs machines that take CO2 out of the atmosphere. And that CO2 then we can use in a variety of different ways, but probably the most easy to understand is simply to take the CO2 out and put it into a geological storage facility and basically create a negative emission. So that's what we do. That funding is really important because, for the last 10 years or so, there's been work on the technology, but there's been very little by way of either investment and capital that's coming into the space, but also a support from, I would say, governments to actually put real money behind this technology. So that was a great signal that money is coming in, that now is actually a point in time where that capital is there from an investment point of view, and the regulatory environment has emerged that's actually going to allow this to hit the market in a big way in the next couple of years.
So when I look at your product, they look like giant air filters, and you can see the carbon coming in, is that right? And then what goes out the other side?
So yeah, the machines are simply processing massive quantities of air, stripping the CO2 out, the rest of the air just goes out back into the atmosphere. And so really that CO2 is the product of what we're doing. And so we can use that CO2, as I said, to actually create a negative emission through carbon removal, or we can actually use that carbon also to put it into useful products like synthetic fuels. We can inject that carbon into concrete. There's ways in which also you can create value from the carbon that you're removing.
Okay, so I have read that 1 million tons of carbon sequestered is like taking 200,000 cars off the road or stopping those emissions coming through. But tell me, we know that there is a climate emergency, but why is it now that we need to be focusing so much on carbon removal?
Okay, well, I think that it's kind of a math problem, I think, and I'm an engineer, sorry. So the way
the
way I look at that is that, at the end of the day, by 2050, we need to get to net zero. And to get to net zero, it's a combination of three big things. And the first is that we have to reduce emissions wherever we can. We need to cut them back like by 80%. The second is that there's, what carbon or fossil carbon we're still using, we have to capture those emissions where we can, and we still won't get to zero. So the only way to get to zero is actually the last 20% is going to have to come out via carbon removal technologies like direct air capture.
It's pretty exciting, and you're also seeing a lot of customers now. Is that right? Tell me who they are.
Yeah. So what's in addition to what the government is doing, there are now companies like Stripe, Shopify. There's also the new Frontier Fund, which includes Meta and Google. So and Microsoft is another that's been out there actually, I would say, being willing to go and be an early buyer to get the technology out there, to get it matured and drive the costs down to where we need to be when we go beyond millions of tons to billions of tons, which is where we need to be by 2050.
How fast can we get to billions of tons?
Well, I think if you imagine that market is nascent today, and a billion ton a year market is a trillion plus year market, we need to get going now and fast. It's going to take 2 decades, 3 decades to get to gigatons. But if we don't start at the megatons in the next 2 or 3 years, we're never going to get there.
Okay, so if I can visit you where? Wyoming, Iceland?
So our first projects, we're working on a couple different geographic sites that for various reasons are likely going to be first. Wyoming in the US has a lot going for it in terms of its ability to qualify wells to sequester CO2. So there's an advantage there. And actually, in terms of Iceland has geology that allows not actually sequestration in gaseous form, but actually CO2 in Icelandic volcanic rocks turns quickly into mineralized carbon. So basically synthetic rocks. So there's the ability in both those locations to take gigatons of carbon over time.
All right, what's your call to action? What do we need the people watching this video to go and do?
Well, I think mostly it's to, again, first of all, learn and understand that, that that getting to net zero is a combination of many things, and one of those key things is carbon removal. So first of all, it's education. Second is, throw your support behind those governments that are actually taking steps like the US did to put real money behind getting these first projects going. And I think the third is, again, there is going to be emerging markets where individuals can buy their portion of carbon removal to offset their own emissions, and those markets are quickly emerging as well.
Adrian, thank you very much for coming by the Hub Culture Summer Davos Pavilion.
Awesome. That was awesome.
Speak to you soon.
Thanks very much.